we've had a lot of requests just to cover off some of the the high level points around wealth and wealth products. Now we're going to break this across a number of videos, so we'll just try to break it down into bite-sized chunks because it is quite a complex area. But we'll today we'll just go do we'll do an high level overview of wealth in general, and then in the preceding or in the subsequent videos we'll break that down into a lot of detail. So just hold if this gets a bit too high level for you, just hold tight. We'll get into more detail, but just want to make sure everyone's on the same page around just kind of how it all comes together. So the first element around I guess wealth and kind of why it's important to have these kind of videos in this conversation is, at the end of the day, it's not dinner conversation. Generally speaking, you don't sit around the table and talk to people around, well, if you were in a car accident, what are you going to do? Or if you had cancer, if you had a heart attack, it's just not something we naturally talk about. So, it's not really that comfortable, and it's not something we generally just bring up just off the cuff. So it's not something you talk about generally in your every day-to-day life. So it is kind of a bit of a reach, and hence people aren't very comfortable with it. The other kind of the result of that, unfortunately, is that people lack a lot of knowledge and they don't have a great strategy if something was to happen to them. Now, that is then compounded by the fact that the products that we have that kind of cover this off are very complex, or they can be very complex, and they're very configurable for the individual person. So there's different things that you can and can't insure, and different tax implications and structures, and it just goes on and on and on. So even when people do have some cover, generally they don't know what they're actually covered for, and they may have gaps in there that they don't even realize. Then beyond that, it does come down to some personal values, and what gives one person peace of mind is different than the next, and this really comes down to our personal experiences. Back to the dinner conversation. It's not something we talk about, but it does happen a fair amount. I mean, I'm sure most of us have known somebody that has become terminally ill, or has been very sick, or has been injured in an unfortunate accident. You don't have to kind of think too hard generally to know that. And so the reality is, it does happen to people. It happens to people. Well, bad things happen to people quite frequently. But it comes down to each of us, has a belief around, a set of values, and the way that we want to protect ourselves is a little bit different. So, a lot of times you can't just, it's definitely not a one size fits all sort of environment, and it's important that we have a conversation and we just kind of outline the facts. And I think this kind of comes down to it, is if you just go through and have a fact-based conversation and say this is where you're at, then it's kind of the great equalizer, and people can then make an informed decision from there. And at the end of the day, I think that is the best that we can hope for, that we can kind of break down some of these knowledge gaps, and we can really focus on just let's talk about the facts. Fourth, there is a lot of regulation in this area, and that really comes down to help protect customers. And because there has been a lot of complexity in the past, and still today, certain people need to have a certain amount of education and skilling to be able to advise people, and that, at the end of the day, is a good thing. But it also means that for some people, it's outside their kind of, I don't know, reach in terms of what they can afford to actually sit down with a highly skilled individual. Plus, it comes down to how skilled that individual is that they talk to. So we can generally talk about a lot, or the customer themselves can talk about it in terms of general advice and based on their own knowledge and own decision making, but we can't necessarily recommend something specific to them. It's really down to, again, laying the facts down, and then for them to make a decision based on, again, what's important to them and what they have to risk. So that's kind of the intro, and I hope maybe that explains why sometimes this is seems a bit more daunting than it is. At the end of the day, it really shouldn't be that complex, but it just is. So those are the kind of four things to just kind of consider. Now, for today, we're just going to really focus again on the high level, and down the track, we're going to first focus on this risk product area, and those just kind of break the HLPCCI off a little bit. But the risk products are basically insurance products that if something catastrophic is going to happen or does happen, then there's a set of insurances that help people transition through that significant impact. And they all I guess, activate and cover slightly different things. And again, this is where some of this complexity is, but they all can, depends on how they're kind of set up, but they all can work in tandem and work in concert with each other. And then there's a whole other set of wealth services and products, and these are more around strategies and ways to generate and build wealth over time. Now, we're going to leave this to the very end. We're going to focus on the risk products first, which is probably just covering customers in terms of something significant happens, and then we can talk about kind of adding real value down the track. So we've created just a really, hopefully, really simple graph here to talk about a kind of common scenario for someone, just to kind of help put some reality around that. Now, looking at this, it's just going to look like a bunch of numbers, but we're going to cover this off the next 5 minutes here, just to hopefully explain what a lot of people go through and how kind of risk cover then plays into that. And then in our subsequent video, we're going to talk about then how the different products specifically interact with each other and kind of run through some scenarios. All right, so first and foremost, we just kind of base this off of a person that's going to make $60,000 a year, and we're going to make $60,000 a year every year of their lives with no increases, and there's no inflation in this, just to make it really simple to understand, or as simple as we can. And let's going to say we're going to buy a house, okay? And we're going to buy a house when they're 30 years old, which is reasonably common. That's all we're going to do. So really, really simple example. They've got some a retirement account as well, and they're going to buy a house. It's no more complex than that, just for our example. So when you're 20 years old and you're going to make, let's say we make $60,000 a year, at 20 years old, your lifetime value in terms of your working life, if you did 43 years, 45 years, sorry, times 60 would be $2.7 million. So that means if you worked every day for the next time between your 20 and your 65, and you took home a check for $60,000, you'd make $2.7 million. Now, it sounds like a lot of money, but spread over that much time, it's still a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it's spread. You got to live and do all those other things. Now, between the time when you first start working and really probably either buying a house or starting a family, in that time, there's normally you're kind of maybe paying off some expenses from going to school. You buy a car, you start kind of getting some assets. At the end of the day, if for whatever reason you weren't able to work, you need to kind of take care of yourself. But there's probably no one else really dependent on you, and there's no other debt that's kind of hanging over your head. So we'll just take that as fact. And each year that you work towards your 65th birthday, each year your potential to earn reduces, okay? Because you just have simply fewer years that you're going to likely be alive, and you're only going to make so much money. So that's kind of the this line right here is your downward kind of curve, downward line around your lifetime's earning potential. Now, on the blue line here is your net asset position. So this is basically, we start off, and it's actually on this axis, right? So we're going to start off and we have nothing. We start off with zero. And kind of through our 20s, we might build up some furniture and a car and a couple of small things. And then something catastrophic happens, is we buy our first house, okay? And we bought a house for $500,000. So now we're going to have some money in our retirement account. We'll have some other things. So we're not going to go all the way down negative 500. We're going to go to negative 300, or sorry, negative 430. And then we're going to do the slow kind of climb out up until the time that we're 65. And at that point, hopefully, we paid off our home, and right about the same time that we stop working, or it depends on the person in terms of what's going on. But at the end of the day, that's what we're going to try to do, or get as close to as possible, because we don't really want to have a whole bunch of debt when there's no income or reduced income. And then for the next number of years, however long we live, the next 20 plus years, then we slowly consume those assets to help ourselves live in retirement. So this is our normal kind of flow of life. Now, when we talk about risk, and we talk about kind of the people that we generally talk to primarily, or we really try to target, it comes down to two kind of key points in life. So the first one is this group between 30 and about 40. Okay, now it doesn't have to be the exact ages. The ages are not important, but it's something around what happens in that time. So when we buy our house and we have or we have kids, all of a sudden we go from having to provide for ourselves to having a big debt and having to provide for probably at least 2 or 3 other people. And if something was to happen to us then, it would be a much bigger issue generally than if it happened when we didn't have any other people to support. So this kind of window is when we have the most debt. Okay, we have again the most debt. We still have a lot of earnings potential. So at that point, we have $2.1 million that we still will earn the rest of our lives in our scenario, and we have still a long time to live. Okay, so at that point, we want to make sure that if something does happen, that we have some sort of strategy in place to make sure that it's not going to be absolutely catastrophic for ourselves and our family for the rest of our lives. The second time that we really focus on is this time kind of after 50 or right around the 50s to the 60 odd mark. And at this point, what happens is because we're now only 10 or 15 years from retirement, our earnings potential is a lot less. We just have fewer years to be able to work. So unless we got a big raise or we started something else, if we just kept on doing what we've done for the last 20 plus years, 30 years, then we only have $900,000 of earning potential left. And if something happens now, then the results may be absolutely catastrophic to our retirement, and it wouldn't really take that much. So just being out of work for a little while or getting sick, as you get older, these things are more common. And at the end of the day, it can be absolutely catastrophic to people. And I'm sure you've had some experiences around this yourself. So if you have a heart attack or you get cancer or something like that. So it's not uncommon. Now, the other thing that happens is with risk insurance, once you actually have an illness, once you have a pre-existing illness, it becomes very hard to actually get any sort of cover. So we want to try to make sure that we get customers before they actually get too ill or they have kind of pre-existing conditions. If they're healthy, it's a lot easier and much cheaper to actually get cover rather than once you actually have cover. And we want to try to support them through this time and make sure that they can hit that retirement age with as much going behind them as possible, and it's been well protected for. So I just hope that this graph hopefully visually explains what happens to everybody as they get a little bit older, and your income potential goes down and your assets go up, and you have these windows, and it can be any time, but these are probably the really critical windows. So 30 to 40ish, and then 50 plus. And it could be younger if you start a family or younger. It could be a little bit older if you started later. Again, it's not hard and fast. It's just to give you a guideline around some of the things that might be happening in somebody's life. So again, I hope that helps. Take it. I went through that pretty quickly, so maybe watch that part of the video a couple times and just try to understand that. Just from a TCA point of view, I just want to call out a couple quick things. Go through and make a list of people that have had experienced some sort of tragedy or a life-changing event. What did they have in place, and what was their impact? So if you know anything, if you don't know anybody, well, then you can use an example that I'm sure has happened within the business. But at the end of the day, if you know somebody or yourself, it'll have more meaning. The second one is you can create your own kind of asset income and asset chart. This is an American website, so they do talk about 401ks versus superannuation and a couple little bits, but you can get through it, and it'll show you kind of where you're at versus what you'll actually need to be able to retire, and they'll kind of get you primed for the next some of our future videos. And I can tell you, 9 or 10% savings a year is not going to get you there. When you do the math, unless you're going to work until you're very old, like 70, you really need to be saving kind of 20+%, or you're going to have a very meager retirement. So it's a bit of an eye opener when you actually go through there and go through that retirement calculator. Again, it's a forecast. It might be different than what it is, but it's a good place to start. So take a look at that. Take a few minutes at it, and I hope this helps just get us going. And we'll talk a bit more about the detail in our next videos. Thanks again. Bye.